1 2 1 2. One two one two. Okay, the sound is good. 1 2 1 2. Okay, the sound is good. 1 2 1 2. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. This will be another open session, inshallah. Excuse me. And I haven't done this in quite some time because I've been busied with personal affairs. Affairs I would prefer not to be dealing with. That has taken a lot of my time. Some affairs I prefer not to be dealing with. Let me say it like that. First and foremost, for the brothers that are mistaken or unaware, I don't live in Philadelphia. I don't live in Pennsylvania, generally speaking, nor do I live in New Jersey. I'm in Maryland and quite a distance away from Baltimore as well. I'm in the eastern shore of Maryland in a small city or small town dubbed Salisbury, which only has a population of about 30,000 people. So, and for those that are probably wondering, this is my right hand right here. I'm drinking with my right hand. If you know anything about the thobes, then the thobe pocket is on the left side, all right? And there is no pocket when you're dealing with asil thobes or dafa thobes. There's no pocket on the right side. There's a pocket on the left side. Commonly, I see people when someone is drinking, they'll say, "Why is he drinking from his left?" Not realizing that from the camera angle, it may appear like that, but in reality, the people are actually drinking from the right. The main point that I was making is that I'm not in Philadelphia. I don't live in Philly. I live in the eastern shore of Maryland, quite a distance away from Baltimore. So I'm not in Baltimore neither. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people make that mistake of thinking that I live in Philly or somewhere in Pennsylvania and thus for so on. And that's not the case. Now, when dealing with this live stream, I just want to update the brothers. There's been some questions asked about Talha Islamic Ministry. And as of right now, Talha Islamic Ministry, when you go to the website, you can see how ambitious the organization is, the ambition the organization has as it relates to the projects that it would like to accomplish or it would like to bring to fruition by Allah's permission. And I think that there are some very good things that we would like to see come to fruition, specifically the campus-style Islamic Center, and other things. But unfortunately, when dealing with this particular organization, we have money in the bank, not a lot of money in the bank, and we don't receive a lot of donations or contributions from people who would love to say what we need to be doing. But when people actually try to organize, what we need to be doing, they don't really seem to support like that. And so there's money in the bank with Talha Islamic Ministry, less than 10 grand at this point. And whenever that depletes, then most likely my intent right now, whenever that depletes, then I'll dissolve that organization and be done with that, inshallah. All that and be done with that. Um, there was an idea of writing up paperwork for an adjudication center, an Islamic family related adjudication center that would have gone through the nonprofit. And I actually started writing the paperwork for that, but I decided not to continue because it takes time. And I highly doubt that the organization would have gotten support to pull something like that off as well. The idea is too ambitious for the type of support that is being given or lack thereof. So I didn't finish putting that together. And I probably won't. And Allah knows best. For those that wonder about the condition of the Muslim moon here where I'm at in Salisbury, Maryland, then there are Muslims scattered about. But unfortunately, with no strong community, it probably remain like that. People would just be scattered about here and there. There is a masjid here. I never go to it. Obviously, because the masjid on the Dhar here appears to be under the control of the Ahbash, and that's clear and apparent due to them praying southeast instead of towards the Qibla northeast. There was over a year ago, there was an attempt to establish something here in Salisbury under Talha Islamic Ministry, where one brother, Walillah alhamd, out of California, mashallah, he donated 3,000. At that time, we had raised 14,000 from one individual that is basically closely related to me, and they saw the vision of what I was trying to do when we were doing the Detroit project. So that cash carried on because, as I was stated before, that the Detroit Land Bank basically blocked us from purchasing the property out in Detroit. I've stated this in the past. At any rate, so we had that 14,000. Another brother, a brother, he gave 3,000, but it wasn't enough to be able to lease a building for 2 years. It wasn't enough, and I didn't feel comfortable putting my name on a contract to be personally responsible if the nonprofit couldn't raise the money or couldn't pay the agreed upon lease amount per month. And so I wanted to raise the money for the 2 years and then go after the property. But when that did not come to fruition, then the idea of establishing something here in Salisbury was scrapped. And so you have Muslims here, the need for some type of masjid or musalla is here. As of now, people like myself who are trying to take their deen serious to the best of one's ability, go out the way to another town where you can actually, where the people actually pray towards the Qibla. but there aren't many options in this area. There aren't many options in this area. And so, because that support never really came, I kind of just scrapped that idea as well. And Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala knows best. So that's the reality when it comes to those projects, because I'm pretty sure people saw the attempts at raising money for all of those projects. And unfortunately, Talha Islamic Ministry, with the exception of those two donors that I mentioned, the 3,000 and then the one that dropped to 14,000, all the rest of the donations were basically small dollar donations, $20 here, $10 there, $5 here, $30 here. You may have had some people drop $200 or $500, that's for so on. But for the most part, it was small dollar donations. And I remember when we were doing the thing in Detroit, it took just about 2 years to raise $3,000, which, you know, um, shows the enthusiasm of the people for the ideas that Talha Islamic Ministry has had. And so, like I said, man, we have now currently, Wallah alham, Talha Islamic Ministry has focused more on the educational aspects of the nonprofit from some of the uh, lecture series that have been organized either at Masha Ibn Taymiyyah in Philly or other than that. And basically, we'll probably just continue going that route because that's what we can afford to do. That's what the ministry can afford to do as of right now, and inshallah. And unless Allah Ta'ala opens up or bestows upon us the means to be able to accomplish some of those other goals that the organization has listed on the website, then we'll probably continue to go this route. And once the money runs out, then we'll just dissolve the organization because I'm really kind of tired of even trying to deal with that anymore. And Allah knows best. Now there was a question concerning Daniel Haqiqatjou and why people like myself have not spoken on that issue. Well, I had a conversation with Sadiq Al Juyani. May Allah reward the brother. I had a conversation with him earlier this week, and he coined a phrase that I'm going to repeat it here, and this should give an answer to what to that question basically. And the phrase that Algiani used is that Pikachu is more relevant in our communities than Daniel Haqiqatjou. I'll repeat. Pikachu, yes, Pikachu from Pokemon is more relevant in our communities than Daniel Haqiqatjou and the stuff that he's saying. In other words, we're going to focus more on what our community's needs are. At least I am, and people like Brother Al Juyani. And the communities that we come from within the inner city and or urban areas could care less about Daniel Haqiqatjou, nor the shubuhat that he's throwing. This is why no real energy has been given on my part concerning him. And I believe I could speak for Al Juyani as well. No energy has been given as relates to Al Juyani concerning Danielle, whatever his name is. The issues that he is putting out there uh, in our communities, people have been clear on for, I don't know how long. And so it's really not even an issue. And so the real issue, if any, well, at least with the brothers involved in Dawah, would be why would brothers who attribute themselves to Al-Minhaj Salafi even platform him in the first place. That's the real issue with the brothers, myself and other brothers. We don't see that to have been a balanced approach at all. It seems as if people are trying to hijack being the balanced people upon the dawah and how they move and like this. But platforming Daniel Haqiqatjou was not balanced at all as it relates to what the Salafi methodology um, uh, means and intends as it relates to balance. On the contrary, that was negligence. That was negligence to have even platformed that guy. We were all scratching our heads, wondering why the people who were platforming him were even platforming him. There was a brother. And I'm gonna say that the channel because I think he's known to everybody. But I caught some of the statements of a brother named with a channel named Features years ago talking about this. Years ago talking about people platforming Daniel Haqiqatjou. And what he said and years ago and what he claimed that he heard from others. I just listened and really didn't have an opinion concerning any of it, but I said to myself, interesting. Interesting for some of the things that he was saying. But the point that I'm making is this is something that was well known that Daniel Haqiqatjou had too much recklessness with him for anybody from Ahlul Sunnah to ever even platform him. It just didn't make any sense. Now, may Allah reward brothers who are exposing him or clarifying his errors now. But again, there's still the question of how was he even platformed? And I think it's coming down to, and to coin something that this brother, the feature said, or from the channel, I think that there is some validity to this divide between a mainstream or mainstream du'at, if that's what you would call it, and quote unquote grassroots du'at or the underground. And at this point, I'm real clear. Like people like myself and brothers that I work with in Dawah and others, we're probably considered to be from amongst, or we are considered to be from amongst the underground. I have about 2,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. There's no 10 or 11 or 12 or 20,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. So my dawah was basically grassroots. It's underground. So people with subscribers over 10,000, they probably consider themselves to be mainstream, and Allah knows best why they would reach out to someone like Daniel Haqiqatjou in the first place. I don't understand that. That's a little puzzling to say the least. I saw the video of Kareem Abu Zaid and Uthman Farouk, and that was pretty pitiful, to say the least, and Allah knows best. But that's why that's why that issue has not been addressed by us, because it doesn't affect the communities that we're dealing with. Pikachu is more relevant in our communities than Haqiqatjou. And so we're just going to focus on the things that are taking place in our community. Hence, the last couple of videos that I've done on my channel, they've been focused on things that are occurring in our community, especially with these failed marriages, some of these wicked women running around here seeking judgment, giving preference to judgments of kufar over the judgment of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, or taking their desires as lords besides Allah, and other such type things that are taking place, or these brothers that claim nobility for themselves and or from some of the biggest opposers to the dawah and biggest fitna makers and rank splitters around. Those are more prevalent in our communities. These problems are more prevalent in our communities that need to be dealt with. And so Daniel Haqiqatjou rings no bells in our communities. That's just the reality. Now, um, when it comes to the last uh, event that took place at Masjid Mukbil, first and foremost, may Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala reward the brothers that helped put that together. I enjoyed visiting the brothers out that way. May Allah increase them in good. I was there busied with uh, not only my talk, but broadcasting the talks through my channel, Walillah alhamd. And, I think I think the people benefited. And inshallah, the brothers at Masjid Mukbil will organize more, inshallah. Now, as for um, just something I wanted to touch on, because quite often, about the Salafis being united and things of that nature, specifically from amongst the callers or the brothers involved in dawah. Now, this is something that's been on my mind. And like I said, I talked about this with our brother Sadiq Al Jiani. I talk to him quite often, more so than anybody else that I work with in dawah. And I'm just going to be honest for a second. The reality is this: when Ramadan came, I gave some advice to the du'at. I gave some advice to the du'at. I even mentioned some people's names. This was in the beginning of Ramadan, where, as far as I'm concerned, was an opportune time for anybody that's trying to correct themselves with Allah. And I would think that the Brotherhood would be at the top of everybody's list. But the reality is, it appeared to me that nobody really even batted an eye at that advice. The only person that I got a call from was Khalid Green. May Allah reward him, because he's somebody that wants that unity that was encouraged in that um, in that advice. But everybody else, I didn't get a call from. Nobody else I got a call from. And I would have thought that something like that would have been encouraging. Of course, brothers who I already work with, some brothers gave me a call to further understand my intent of making that speech, and I clarified that to those brothers. Walillah alhamd. But again, it didn't seem to motivate anybody as it relates to unity. I've been to Philly multiple times since that advice has gone out. And first and foremost, when I go into Philly, I'm going in as a guest, not a resident. I don't live in Philly. I'm going in as a guest. One of the things that I saw when I was overseas visiting the Mashaykh is that when a scholar would come from out of town, the scholars of that locality, wherever that scholar was teaching at, the scholars of the locality would stop what they were doing, and they would come honor their guests. They would come visit their guests, the guest that was in their city, even though he may not have been going to their masjid. Um, so they would stop whatever they were doing at Durus and like this, and they would go visit that scholar that was in town. A couple of times that I've gone into Philly, I've been encouraged to visit this one and visit this brother and sit for this reason and that reason. And I want brothers to understand something, because I had a talk with Al Juyani, and I mentioned these things to him. And me and him basically had the same sentiment. We've gone into Philly more than once as guests. We have an obligation to we have an obligation to whoever it is we had agreed to do the talks with. Most like a lot of times they're putting their money down so we could come out. So we have somewhat of an obligation to uphold what we're there for, especially with someone like myself who is not only just giving talks and a lot of these events that were thrown. I was either a partial organizer of them or a full organizer of them, right? And so I wore more than one hat, right? So it's not possible for me to leave a conference that I either co-organized or organized, and I'm broadcasting via my channel. It's not possible for me to leave that and go across town to a masjid to visit a da'i who's a resident of Philadelphia. And I need brothers to understand this because if the roles were reversed, if I was a resident, not a part of the whatever uh, lecture series was taking place, and I knew that guests were coming in town, then I would go visit them. I would go visit them. They're coming in town. They're giving dawah at this masjid, at this event, at this day. So why is it that people don't see where these brothers who are residents come and visit guests that are coming into their town? But it's looked at like in the reverse, that the guests that are coming in town have an obligation to the masjid in which they're coming in town for to give their talks and like this, because the obligation that they committed to have to get up and leave and visit residents in that town. Now I'm saying this to say, because I've come to a conclusion at this point that, man, these brothers don't want unity. These brothers don't want to rectify problems. If there's problems amongst the brothers, at this point, I'm just clear. The reason why things are the way that they are is because people don't care. They don't care. If they care, you will see a difference. People don't care. Now people have to come to grips with that. I've come to grips with it at this point. People don't care, and so I'm not striving to do that anymore because one, I don't have time to waste. I don't have time to waste. I don't have time to waste. So people are off in their little corners doing whatever they do. May Allah reward them if whatever is done is sincerely for His sake. Yani, may Allah pardon brothers for the mistakes that they make. But I'm not chasing after anybody. I'm not chasing after anybody. It's clear what needs to be done here. And if people feel otherwise, then okay, no problem. And so that's where I'm standing at this point. I didn't make it like this. I just recognize that this is the way it is, and that's how I'm moving. So I hope that for anybody that hears what I'm saying, this isn't me saying I have a problem with this brother or that brother or this brother or that brother, but I am saying brothers don't want unity. That's why you don't see it. Let's get real. Let's get real. If you feel like brothers are disunited and thus forth and so on, well, the very same brothers don't want unity. They don't want it, or else it would have happened already. Whatever problems that are occurring, they don't want to settle it. They don't care. It's obvious that people are not concerned with that. Period. I'm at this point, I'm convinced of that. So I'm not worried about it anymore. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I'm not sitting around losing sleep over this, you know, and that's just the reality. Again, may Allah reward our brother Khalid Green, who actually reached out. And in fact, with me saying that, I need to give him a call. It's been a while since I talked to him. I need to give him a call, inshallah. But let me say this, because some people would say, well, it's possible for just about anybody that's involved in dawah to catch up with me, right? And to catch up with any of the brothers for that matter. Why? Because if people don't know me personally, they know somebody involved in dawah that they may work with that knows me. So it's not impossible for any of the brothers to catch up with people. So if any thought comes into a person's head, well, they don't know this brother, they don't know that brother, they don't. No. That's not the case. That's not the case. People just don't care. They don't care. People are in their space and they have their space and they're content with that and they don't care about you know what's outside of their space. That's what I believe is taking place. It's the same thing as it relates to the so-called mainstream du'at that claim Salafiyah and people like myself that are grassroots. We just don't have enough subscribers. That's why they don't reach out. And Allah knows best. On a dhahir, that's what it appears to be. But Allah knows best. Allah knows the true reality. We just don't have enough. We don't have a big enough subscriber count for them to reach out to any of us. And that's for so on, and that's okay too. But the point that I'm making is let's be realistic when we talk about this. Let's be realistic. Why isn't this? Why isn't that? Because they don't care. They don't care. Whatever their real motivations are, Allah knows best. But at the end of the day, the conclusion is they don't care enough to do that. That's why you don't see it. So there's no need for me to be questioned about it whenever I go to Jersey or wherever I go to Philly or whenever I go to Baltimore. There's no need for people to question me about unity with this brother or that brother when if I'm going into that person's town and he's a resident, he doesn't even come out and visit. It's because he doesn't care. And Allah knows best. Okay, I see a question and I don't really even understand the full extent of what's intended by the question. Why do some Salafis show fake love when a sheikh they didn't like dies? Sheikh Muhyiddin. I'm assuming Sheikh Muhyiddin is what's intended. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it may be beneficial for them to show fake love at the time that they're showing it. I have no idea. That question can be answered, maybe answered differently depending on who you're referring to. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Here's another question. At what point do we Salafis cooperate with the other groups to achieve goals like a Muslim cemetery, handle our own marriage issues with our own contracts that we write and settle disputes, etc.? It's well known that Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah could work with any Muslim if it's considered to be at ta'awun al birri wa taqwa. As Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala clearly commands, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. And aid one another upon bir and taqwa, and do not aid one another upon sin and transgression. So if it's an issue that is exactly that, then the Muslim can assist another Muslim in that. Uh, Keep in mind, it's aiding upon bir wa taqwa and not aiding upon the someone's bid'ah becoming prevalent and thus forth and so on. So if it's really an issue of birr wa taqwa, then yeah, I mean the Muslims, the Salafi could work and cooperate with other groups to achieve a widespread benefit to the Muslims that has no connection to the whatever his that may be cooperated with to pull off that benefit, meaning it doesn't benefit that his. No, it's an actual general benefit for the Muslim community. Some dire need within the community is being fulfilled as a result of working with uh, some non-Salafis in that regard. That's kind of well known, and Allah knows best. But maybe in certain circles, it's not well known because of the excessiveness that are with some people. But when you're dealing with actual balance, brothers upon the dawah, that's well known, and Allah knows best. Now, so at any rate, I more or less wanted to test this microphone out, and it's definitely working. At any rate, one of the things, that the brothers should just keep in mind is that whatever community that you come out of, stay focused on the problems that are in your community and eliminating those problems, and don't busy the community with things that are unnecessary, or excuse me, things that don't impact them in any way whatsoever. I think that the communities that we come from, the Philadelphias, the Baltimores, the LAs, in retrospect, when looking back at our communities, we've been distracted from doing a lot of things because we're focused on issues that are somewhat irrelevant to the needs of our communities. And as a result, negligence as it relates to uplifting the community has occurred. I mean, most masajid within the inner cities and or underprivileged areas don't have schools connected to them. And outside of the school that's connected to Masjid at Tawheed in Detroit, Michigan, I can't think of any other Salafi school in the country, at least not in the inner city and or urban areas. And that's pretty pitiful. That's pretty pitiful to say the least. So our priorities have got to change at some point. I don't know for the brothers that are in Philly. I don't know how true this is, but every time I hear about sisters that are going to shelters that may be homeless for whatever reason, that go to shelters. They go to shelters that are organized and established by Catholics or some other denomination of Christianity. We don't have a transitional home for women in Philadelphia, or a transitional home for brothers in Philadelphia. We got about 4 or 5 masjids that claim to be Salafi, though. We don't offer that service. And it's probably been a need amongst the Muslims for like 30, 40, or 50 years. That's the case, and I think it's time to shift priorities, right? And Allah knows best. But at any rate, I'm going to sign out on that note that we probably need to shift priorities. There's no probably about it. I'm just saying that. That's just a nice way of saying it, really. But we need to get our acts together. That's just the rock bottom line. We need to get our act together by Allah's permission, or else we're just going to see ourselves being on the same level 20 years from now. And it'd be a whole new group of du'at that'll be trying to figure out how to do the same things we're trying to do now. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala knows best. So with that, man, I'm going to sign out. Waffaqana Allahu wa iyaakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.